Welcome to a session on developing a quality STEM research project, but using sentence starters. My name is Sarah Nern, and I'm the K-12 Outreach Coordinator for the Department of Chemistry at Purdue University.
And I am Stephen Smith, the K-12 Outreach Coordinator for the Department of Earth, Atmospheric, and Planetary Sciences.
And we're here today, we're going to share with you some resources for putting together, once your students have done a research project, putting that poster presentation together, because that can be a really intimidating process, especially if you've never done this before. And there are some differences between like a formal lab report and putting together a poster presentation that you might present to other scientists, to your peers.
This can obviously we're gearing things towards the science symposia that we do, and we have an entire another video explaining the difference between science fair and science symposia. Mm-hmm. But my short point being, you can adapt this for a science fair. So if you're doing science fairs, you're thinking about changing up a science fair or starting one, mm-hmm. This is something you can easily use and adapt for your science fair at your school.
Globe Mission Earth added on to a template that globe.gov was already using, and Globe Mission Earth did these sentence starters, and we are so happy and thankful that they're allowing us to highlight some of these. Of course, we'll share the link where you can go to get all of these poster templates, because it's not just this one. There are several poster templates, and it's going to relate there will be a lot of mention with using GLOBE protocols specifically. Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment is this awesome program. It's environmental education program for all content areas throughout the world.
Globe.gov.
Yep.
You can find out more about it. Just go to globe.gov.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That's fair. But we don't have to use Globe for necessarily for the posters that you might be putting together for your own research. So I want to begin with the first part of the poster, the asking questions. And when we look at this, the poster under this section should really emphasize the research question that the student or students were asking, and also it should state their hypothesis. But then we just wanted to point out in each of these, we'll point out then those sentence starters. So I love this. This gives the students a chance to understand exactly what the types of things they should be writing to include here. So for example, our research question asks, and our hypothesis is, we're interested in researching this topic because of some reason. And then in class we learned something and we wanted to find more about this. Then I'm going to suggest moving on then to the research methods. And this would be another section of the poster. Really for this one, you're just describing the planning process that you use. Whatever you used for your data collection, specific tools or equipment that were used. And so you can glance through these sentence starters that they've come up with. Our plan for the investigation is, our plan will produce data to test whatever you're testing. The study site is located. Our study site looks like, and really there's even a good spot, in the next section for a study site map if that's applicable. Mm-hmm. That won't necessarily be something you include for every research project. And so again, we see GLOBE protocols here, but you may not have any GLOBE protocols, and that's okay. We plan to collect however much data, however many times each day, however many times, just the frequency of the data that's collected. And then maybe the time of day when that's collected as well. Yeah. Okay, and then kind of going along with the research methods, we have then what was done to actually carry out that investigation. So the protocols and data that were really used, and a description of those activities that the students complete. And so then you can see, GLOBE protocols we use specifically, and maybe not GLOBE protocols, maybe just any protocol that the students were using to gather that research. When we collected data, they noticed this happened. We collected a total of, however many data points. They analyzed data using, whatever types of procedures and methods to help answer the research question, or that they use these methods because it was going to help the research in a certain way.
I really like the sentence starters. Because the hardest part is figuring out how to start a section.
Absolutely, and if you've never done it. So by giving
these examples, these starters, it really lets the students be able to be more successful, and I think it takes a lot of the anxiety away.
Absolutely. I think it's so daunting when you're facing this, like, I've never done this, and I have to put a whole poster together, and it can seem very, very formal. And so these sentence starters are such a great way to just get the kids thinking about writing. Yeah. Then we look at results. A lot of times the results is where they show their graphs or they show their figures or tables that they're putting, and they should clearly state those results as well. That's really it under the results section. And you might have, looks like, they do expect some like maybe a paragraph or a paragraph and a half about, what do these results show? The analysis we conducted addressed the research question, which is important. We always want to tie those back then to that original research question that was posed by the student group. Maybe directing it to the table or figure that you're using. As shown in this table, this data was collected and these data points, in this case, they're referencing the GLOBE database if it was included there. And then also a summary of our results show, or according to our data, we noticed this happened.
Yeah. How did it support it?
Mm-hmm. And then from the results, we get into interpreting that data under the discussion section. And here we're going to explain the importance and the relevance and the impact of the research that the students are completing. But the other really important part that I always feel like the students need to do is compare those results with similar studies that are done. And so there's a lot of sentence starters on these.
A lot of times with the different science fairs over the years, I've judged a lot of them. Yeah. This has really been the weakest section or missing section to me. It's how do you interpret that data? Oftentimes it's, here's our methods, here's our data, here's a conclusion, but the conclusion is not really going back interpreting the data well. And so I think this does a good job of helping the students be able to answer those questions.
And I think along those lines, and I notice in these sentence starters as well, that it might be that the results that the students get don't support their original research question or don't support their original hypothesis. And that's part of the process that, as these sentence starters, I'm glancing through probably the fifth one, the results do or do not help answer the research question. And that's part of the scientific process. When you're doing authentic science, that's okay. That's something you can't know that going into it. And the students need to understand it's not a failure. It's just part of the process, and they get to address that in a different section.
Yep.
Now I'm going to take us back to the introduction, and I think an introduction is really difficult to write at the very, very beginning, which is why we've gone through it sort of the way we have. Once you've been through the question that you asked, the methods that you used, the results that you collected, the discussion of those results, I think now you're at the part where you can go back and look at that introduction. So what was the importance of the research? What issue is it addressing? Is it an environmental issue, a societal issue, something else? And then also that you're including, they're suggesting 3 or more scientific studies with one of those primary sources coming from a peer-reviewed journal. And so it's important to talk to students about where they might find these sources. That can take some time.
Yes, because those can be hard.
And then you can see their sentence starters are, researching this topic is important because this topic addresses some issue because of some reason. And it might be something important to your community or something important to, the student's life. And for our research, we use whatever protocols we're using or data to understand how and what it is their research question is seeking to find. And then from the introduction, we go to conclusions and next steps. And for this, we state the conclusions. And this is where it's a little different from a formal lab write-up, because in a formal lab write-up, the students are doing a lab where we've done this lab lots of times. The kids really aren't learning any brand new, piece that's going to contribute to the scientific community, which is a difference from the research project. And the idea is they might be observing something or collecting data that might be something that could be contributed to science. And so what are those conclusions? What can they get out of interpreting the results that they collected? And explain how those conclusions were reached, and then implications for further research. Maybe they didn't end up with something that was going to address their original research question. So this is the place where they can address that concern.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can see the sentence starters, our conclusion is or is not supported by the results because improvements to our research can be made. We appreciated doing this research for GLOBE and NASA because if that's applicable. And then we go to probably the very beginning, which is the abstract. And the abstract is just a really brief, it's going to describe the research objectives. It's going to include what the research question was, but it's also going to quickly describe the methods, state the results, and draw the conclusion. So it's sort of everything all in one, and you're going to notice a lot of times it's 200 words or less, which is tricky.
Yes, it is.
You have to be really concise with that part.
But when we do scientific papers, though, I mean, we do that last because it summarizes. And then you force yourself to already go through everything. And so then we put that together. I know the last one we submitted to the peer review journal. It's, as a group, we kind of all did Zoom on group, and then we did our abstract and cut it down. And so but again, the sentence starters is really nice to be able to have here because students aren't used to doing that, and so it kind of, these sentence starters, I think, does a good job. I would use like all of them in this section probably because it's going to walk them through the research is about, why is it, our research question was, this is, what was it about, what was the question, the protocols, so how did we do it, methods, right? And then, of course, the results and conclusion.
And the conclusion there. So we just wanted to highlight that we think these sentence starters are an excellent tool. Like I said, they're available at that link that we gave you. We'll make sure that's available, and we hope this will be useful as you're helping your students develop their poster presentations.
Yeah, we found them really useful when we're working with students, and so we wanted to share with y'all. And I encourage you to do these, use these, have your students use these, and see how they'll help them out. And you might tweak them for your personal thing. Next year you might, my kids kind of needed more, and that's fine.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what we do, right?
Right.
And you might we're finding there are more and more, well, especially now, virtual places for them to present their research. So as you have students do some sort of research on something and kind of go through and build this paper, I encourage you to submit them to multiple places if you can find those. And that way they can get more feedback, and just that presentation will get better and better for them each time, and they'll be able to think and reflect on what they did and how they might do it next time.
It's very similar, I think, to writing a paper in like language arts or in English or something, and the more feedback you get, just the stronger and the better that research is.
Yeah. Well, thank you.